If we're making moral decisions, it is important to know when life begins. But to actually talk about humanity, about people in Canada as only becoming someone with rights, therefore only counting, after being completely delivered from one's mother's birth canal, is something that I cannot understand that people who are thinking about these things could possibly accept as valid. We even have an interesting perspective on who is not so much a human being, because these days and days past, abortion proponents would say that we're just a clump of cells and make that reductionist approach. Well, we are a bunch of cells greatly magnified, but we know what was meant then. It was a way of saying it doesn't matter and therefore it could be disposed of. But the debate really centers now not so much around who's a human being, but who's a human person. And this is where law is introduced again. So in Canada, the law tells us that we're not a human person until we're completely delivered from the birth canal of our mother. So up until that particular time of delivery, that means that any baby in the womb cannot legally be designated a person, which means that as a non-person, one cannot have rights, because only someone designated a person can have rights. And that to me is, that's a completely arbitrary law that tells us that that's when we become a person, because it's scientifically not true. Every scientist knows that a human being starts to develop from the moment of conception on. And so scientifically, that time of conception, that process that has begun, is the same ongoing process that results in you and I and the rest of the world who's walking around. This is how it all starts. And any other way of designating a human being is a legal, I call it a legal fiction, because there are other legal fictions.
You have talked about the life issues. How does that apply at the end of life? Because often we hear arguments for euthanasia based in the idea of dying with dignity, or being merciful and compassionate.
I would say yes, we should be dying with dignity, in the sense a dignified death, if possible, makes perfect sense. That's what any of us, I think, would want. And the idea then is that we came from God, we go back to God when God calls, when God decides. We always just called it natural death. For centuries, for eons, euthanasia has been looked on, and it's not a Catholic approach, just been looked on as something you don't do to people. You don't end someone's life prematurely. One person in particular whom I know, she still feels guilty because she couldn't stop her mother. Well, she couldn't stop her mother, it was her mother's choice. But she feels as if her mother had realized that palliative care would have been more available, or if something else were possible, then that wouldn't be the only choice. She felt it was hasty because her mother certainly she had a serious illness. We would never downplay that, but the answer to that, as my friend recognized, is that we step up the level of care, we step up the type of care that we can have at home. You know, there are other solutions, if you like, to what is perceived as a problem, and really dying isn't a problem. But once everything is legalized, and then people begin to push for, well, let's do it in this situation, and why not in this situation? It's almost just something that's set up to be, conquered and dealt with. There's no mystery. There doesn't seem to be a real acceptance that this is a natural process, that it even helps other people to accompany us through the natural process. Life and death can never be a Catholic issue, but it is also a Catholic issue because of the high regard in which we hold life.